y'all get into this show called High Potential? It's actually pretty good. So boom, let's discuss. So I seen a preview about this lady with high intellect, a mother, who gets brought on as a consultant to help the LAPD solve cases, but she's not like a cop. So I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. Hit record. Never got around to watching it until now, holiday break. Watched the first episode. It's called Pilot. They didn't even give it a name, but it's actually pretty good. So here we go. So we start out with Morgan. She's working as a cleaner at night. Headset on, dancing around, completely careless, dancing on these people's desks, moving their stuff around. As she's cleaning, she knocks over a file. When she knocks over the file, pictures fall out of an actual murder crime scene. She looks up at the crime board and realizes that the two go together. And she writes out, there's a woman that we find out her name is Lynette. They have her as suspect. She crosses out suspect. She writes victim. And then she goes on about her cleaning and goes home about her business, right? So then we cut to the next day. The LAPD Detective Kardec and Detective Soto, they all come back to work. He realizes that the board has been tampered and altered with, right? He's like, who touched my board? Nobody cops to it. So he's like, okay, well, we're going to pull the footage. They pull the footage and they see the cleaning lady then touch the board. So he's like, oh, where do we find this woman? We cut to Morgan food shopping. She's a single mom of 3. She has a teenage girl, a 12-year-old son, and then an infant baby. As she's going to the register, you can notice that her and the son have something in common. She's already calculated a total of her groceries as the lady cashier is scanning her stuff. So she's so confident too. She's like 167, whatever. And the lady's like, no, it's actually 174 or something. And she's like, no, did you get all my coupons? And the lady's like, yeah, and it's still 174. So then they realize that her daughter has slipped gloss or something in her cart. So that's what threw off the total. So in reality, Morgan was right. They leave the grocery store. She pushes the shopping cart on public transportation, which embarrasses her teenage daughter, as any teenager would be. And the daughter's like, when we get in our car? And she's like, when I get money to get it fixed. And so right away, her and the son, you notice that they have a lot of similarities when it comes to, again, high intellect. And the daughter, she's like, y'all are show offs. So it must have skipped her. So there's a little bit of saltiness there. They get home. Detective Kardec is at the door. He asks Morgan, he says, we need to take you down to the station. We got questions, right? They sit her down. They show her the video of her messing with their files and tampering with their board. And they threaten her with obstruction and tampering with evidence, right? And she's like, how am I obstructing or tampering evidence when I'm helping y'all? I seen a problem and I fixed it. And they're like, well, what do you mean? What do you see? And she's like, she goes on, she explains that the wife, the Lynette, the lady, so we have a dead husband and the wife is missing. Now, typically people would think that the wife killed her husband and went on the run. Morgan's theory is that the wife was also kidnapped. She just wasn't killed like the husband was. She notices in one of the pictures that a strand of the wife's hair was stuck to the chair. So she's saying that the lady was taped up and that there's a third victim involved. So they're like, we don't know this lady like that. For all we know, she's a cleaner. Put her in a holding cell and we'll see if her story checks out. So they put her over there. At that time, they start interrogating a victim that had visited Lynette and the Acosta's home. It's this lady, they got the door cam footage and this lady ringing the doorbell. And then shortly after that is when the guy died. So they're like, you're the last person to visit this home. What's going on? So they're accusing her of it, right? And so the woman claims that she wasn't there that day. She was home the entire day. That's not the day that she visited their home. So this lady, she also has sued an employee of that firm, this Brian Diamond guy, and that Lynette, the lady who's missing, was his defense attorney. So it's like they're all connected in a way, right? So as Morgan leaving the precinct, she points out, they're all 4 detectives around this video. They're like, she's saying she was home, she never visited, but she's clearly on camera with a timestamp. Morgan's walking by casually, and she's like, well, that video has been altered. And they're like, wait, what? What are you talking about? And she's like, it's clear from the lady's hair, the way it was blowing from south to north or north to south, whichever way. She's like, that only happens during certain times of the year. Also, the church in the background is facing east. Now, who knew that all churches face east? I didn't know that. But yeah. And so she's saying that that video has obviously been doctored, right? Morgan, she keeps walking. She did it in one stride, walking right on about her business like she didn't just drop a bomb on them. So then Detective Soto follows behind her. And she's like, wait, how did you do that? Like, how did you do that? And she explains, Morgan, this is where we get her, I don't want to say her diagnosis, but this is where we find out that she has an IQ of 160, right? The technical term is called high potential intellectual. So she has advanced creativity, cognitive abilities, right? Photographic memory. She sees numbers. And the lady's like, oh, so that's a gift, right? And Morgan's like, no, not exactly, right? My mind keeps spinning out of control. Like, until I solve it, I can't sleep. It's impossible for me to hold down a job, a conversation, a relationship, all of that. So as she's leaving, she gets into it with two cops outside. Her ex-boyfriend, who is the father of the youngest two kids. I don't know, this part was weird. They got into it. Like, she's like a rebel. She didn't want to go around them. She wanted to go through them. And they were like, ma'am, step off. She ended up getting arrested again. Now, both of them are back in the holding cell. So she didn't got arrested twice, pretty much. Whatever. The detective at the time, he picks up Lynette, who's missing. He picks up her daughter from the airport, right? Back at the station, the two detectives, they go back and forth about Morgan. And the lead detective Soto, she's like, she realizes like they're desperate, right? So she's like, she suggests that Detective Kardec takes Morgan with him. And he's like, what? She's a cleaning lady. And she's like, yeah, well, she obviously found things that we missed. And I missed it too. So it's an extra pair of eyes. And she's like, that's not really an option. That's an order. Take her with you. So Morgan leaves the jail. And outside, she recognizes from those pictures that have fell in the first scene, she recognizes Lynette's daughter from those pictures. So she sees her. She walks up to her. They share. Lynette's daughter shares her last picture that she got from her mom 3 days ago. So they have a little moment. She mentions that her mom had got a letter from this lady named Sarah, and that her mom, Lynette, shared the letter with her sister, which was the girl's aunt. So while Morgan's sitting down outside, Detective Soto says she comes up and she kind of like soft threatens her. She's like, at a minimum, you're looking at 6 months and thousands of dollars in fines. It was kind of like a scare tactic because you've been causing ruckus since you've been here, ma'am. And so, but you've also been helpful, right? So Morgan's like, she peeps it and she's like, listen, if you want my help, just ask me. So Detective Soto is like, you know what? There's a lady missing and we really need your help. She looks at Net's daughter and she says, you know what? You got it. Boom, on to the next one. So Morgan and Detective Kardec, they arrive at Lynette's sister's house. Now, y'all know Detective Kardec, he was reluctant to have Morgan come along from the beginning. So right before they walk in, he tries to lay the ground rules. No talking, no touching. You observe them. Don't say nothing. You're not really even there. Just stand, right? Immediately when they walk in the house, Morgan's like, well, can I get a gun? I need to be strapped. He's like, yeah, no. So immediately, Morgan, she starts peeping the sister's home. She starts peeping the sister in the home, right? She's touching figurines. She's moving stuff. She's asking this lady questions. Detective Kardec ain't even got a word out. She's taking the lead on this investigation. She reads from across the room. The lady had her laptop open. She's read half the article from across the room. And the lady is like, wait, how did you do that? And she's like, so you a biologist? And Morgan, she just kind of realizes that something with this sister is off. Your sister is missing. Something's off with her, right? And so when they get outside, Morgan's like, something's off with that lady. Like, her sister's missing. She got a letter from her that someone has sent her sister. She hasn't shared anything with anyone. That's weird. She's like, I barely know you. And if you were missing, I would have told people by now, right? Once outside, they're outside. Detective Kardec, they get into it because, like I said, she took the lead and she was just supposed to stand there on the investigation. So they have many blowouts where Morgan storms off. This is just one of the many, right? So Morgan, boom, she storms off. He lets her go, whatever, because she wasn't supposed to talk. So at that time, Detective Kardec, he visits the Acosta law firm where Lynette, the lady who's missing, he visits that law firm. If he thinks that letter that she got, it may be in her office, right? The law firm, they don't want to cooperate unless you have a search warrant. So he's like, okay, whatever. He goes to the bathroom. As he's in the bathroom, Morgan pops up in the men's bathroom and surprises him with the letter. Meaning she broke into that lady's office and stole the letter. Completely against protocol. He's like, Why would you do that? Like, this would be admissible in court. We needed a warrant, the whole nine. So she finds that Sarah, who sent the letter, the lady Sarah who sent the letter to Lynette, was also abused by this guy named Diamond and wanted Lynette to help her sue, right? For assault. For Diamond, this guy Diamond been assaulting everybody, right? Morgan believes that Diamond could have murdered Lynette to prevent the case from moving forward. Detective Kardec explains that it's inadmissible in court because we didn't have a search warrant for this, and they put it exactly back where she got it from, and that if she gets caught, he'll help arresting her if she gets caught, right? But he also agrees to have a conversation with the guy Diamond that's mentioned in the letter. So they kind of have this push and pull. Like he's reprimanding her and he don't like her tactics, but he's taking the gems and jewels that she's given, right? So Morgan, she gets to witness her first interrogation. She notices they're interrogating this guy, Mr. Diamond. She notices that this guy, from the watch and his handcrafted Italian shoes, he mentions a place called Fontana. And she was like, somebody with those type of shoes, that watch, would not be caught dead in Fontana unless it was, I don't know, a bachelorette party. It had to be one of those one-time life things for him to be caught in Fontana. As they're interrogating him and she's banging on the door, ask him about Fontana, Mr. Diamond gets released because an executive from the Acosta firm comes in. The secretary seen some lady dressed in a skirt and some go-go boots enter Lynette's office twice earlier that day, which was Morgan. So they did see her. So he gets released. Detective Kardec, he's upset. He looks back at the glass, look at Morgan. I told you that we were going to get burnt for this, right? Detective Soto is like, what happened? What's going on? So he sent Morgan home, leave it up to professionals. Go home. She storms off. She goes about her business. This is like the third storm off, right? So now Morgan is cooking dinner. Like I said, she has 3 kids, the oldest being a teenager. The oldest girl, she's kind of upset and she feels isolated because, like I said, she doesn't feel like she's like her mom. Her brother has been showing gifts of high intellect like Morgan, and she doesn't have that gift. And she feels like they're showing off when they're just being them, right? And so Morgan's trying to console her because the middle child, he obviously has similar attributes, high IQ, etc. So that's when we find out that Ava, the daughter, and the middle son, his name is Elliot, right? So we find out that the daughter, she has a different father than the youngest two. Her father, 15 years ago, went out to get Pampers and just never came back, right? When Morgan reported it all those years ago, the cops didn't believe it. They didn't think that he went missing. They just think that he just skipped town. He left because he didn't want to be there. And so no one has believed Morgan all these years. So they never really looked for him because they thought that he went missing because he wanted to go. He wasn't against his will. You probably just drove that man crazy. So that's what they're thinking. So she tries to console her daughter about her father. You know, he loved you, etc. So the next morning, as they're eating breakfast, her son, Elliot, he notices a man standing in the yard. The man is Detective Kardec, so he's back. So like I said, they have many storm-offs, but he always come back to see what Morgan has to say. First thing he says when she opens the door, he's like, why'd you ask me about Fontana? She invites him in as she's doing breakfast, getting them ready for school. She starts breaking down the case and what she noticed in the sister's house the day before. Like I said, she wasn't really vibing with the sister. Like something was off, right? She noticed a souvenir on the wall that said from Fontana. Also, something with the flowers in the picture that Lynette's daughter has showed her at the precinct, at the station that day. She suggests that Diamond approached Lynette's sister for leveraging the case against them. And so that guy, Mr. Diamond, and Lynette's sister is having an affair. However, both of them have alibis for the day that Lynette's husband turned up dead and Lynette turned up missing. She's missing. Both of them have alibis. So Morgan suggests that if the sister and Diamond have alibis, then the police must be mistaken about the time that the murder was committed, right? So they head to the Acosta house, Lynette's house. They head to the crime scene. As they're going to the crime scene, she's got Detective Kardec doing carpool, dropping her kids off at school, making the rounds. At the Acosta house, Morgan, now that she's in the crime scene where it happened, she starts putting the puzzle pieces together, right? She thinks that Mr. Diamond and Lynette's sister went to persuade Lynette to drop the case against Diamond, right? So this man then start messing with this lady's sister just to get to the lawyer and say, hey, drop the case. Very bold. She said, so as she's talking, they're kind of acting it out, right? During the argument, she's saying that Lynette's husband went and grabbed a gun because they were getting kind of aggressive with his wife, her sister, and this man that her sister is dating, right? They were getting aggressive. Well, some kind of way, the Diamond guy got the gun away from Lynette's husband, shot him, and now Lynette has witnessed all this. They got to find something to do with Lynette. So Morgan believes that they tied Lynette up as she was a witness. And that's why she had noticed that strand of hair in the very first picture and crossed out that she is a victim, not a suspect. She think that they tied Lynette up because earlier that day, before they went to the crime scene, Morgan had asked her neighbor, who is a florist, who sometimes watches her kids, about how long it does it take for these select flowers to die. Because the last picture that Lynette shared was like 3 days ago with her daughter. And the picture that the daughter had, the flowers are in the background and they were fresh. But when the crime scene photos, those same flowers were dead. So she's like, the timing is off somewhere. So Morgan believes that they altered the temperature in the room. They froze the body. After the man was dead, she thinks that they cut the temperature way down to freeze the body a day earlier. Then they doctored the door cam to frame that lady who had sued them to change the time. That looks like she arrived the day that guy died. And then that they raised the temperature to tamper with the coroner's time of death estimate. So there's a lot going on. They dropping temperatures, doctoring footage, and then raising temperatures again to kind of throw the time of death off and frame this lady in the process. A lot going on. So as they're putting all the pieces together, Morgan's looking on the wall and she notices the picture of Lynette at her childhood home. And this home happens to be in Fontana, right? So it's like a cabin. So that's where they go to see if that's where Lynette is. So they arrive there and Lynette is still alive and she's actually tied up in the cabin. They've already killed her husband, but I guess the sister said, I can't kill my own sister. I can kill my brother-in-law, but not my sister. So they tied her up and threw her on the couch and left her there. So the cops find her. Detective Soto, she thanks Morgan, the head lead detective Soto. She thanks Morgan and offers her a job as a consultant. She hands her an envelope. Morgan says she's not cut out for it, right? She says, no, I'm not really cut out for this, and no thank you. She looks around. She sees the daughter and Lynette reuniting, the daughter and the mom reuniting. And she gets a little emotional with that because she has somebody who's been missing for 15 years and she hasn't got a single word, right? So the next day, we cut to the next day. Ava, her daughter, and Morgan are walking. And Morgan is still trying to explain, like, your dad didn't leave you, right? He loved you, right? And Ava is like, stop lying. Stop lying to me. At least stop lying to yourself. He's gone because he wanted to be gone. Morgan's like, no, he vanished. You got to believe me. And she's like, Mom, I ain't trying to hear it. That man left. So Morgan, she can't really convince her daughter. She can't convince the cops. She can't convince anything. So at this time, we cut to the next day. She turned the job down at first. So we cut to the next day. Morgan is storming into the LAPD office. She storms into the lead detective Soto's office and she starts negotiating her terms. She's like, I need a 30% raise. She's like, no, I need 20% raise in childcare. You can figure the childcare part out. So Detective Soto is like, is that it? And she's like, no, I need you to find someone for me. His name is Roman. So Roman is Ava's father, her oldest daughter's father. She's like, he vanished 15 years ago. Police say he skipped town, but she knows that he didn't, right? So Detective Soto says, you got a deal. So she will be hired as a consultant to help the LAPD. So this was the first episode and it was pretty good. I recorded it just from seeing the commercial. Never got around to watching it, like I said. But the first episode got us locked in. It was pretty good. You learn a lot too. Who knew all churches face east? Who knew? But thank you for watching. Stay tuned, like, subscribe, share, and keep an eye out for the second episode. I want to review that one as well. Thank you.